Welcome, everyone, to a new week of the Media Row podcast with me, Justin Miller, sponsored by Kelly's Little Nipper and Stevens Automotive and Sales. It's going to be a weird kickoff to this week, and I apologize. I am sick and down bad right now. Fever this morning, stomach issues. I'm sure that's exactly what you're tuning in to hear about, but just kicking my ass today. But we're still going to talk sports because that's what we love to do. And we have a lot of fun things to get to today's show. We have recap of an amazing Saturday despite the weather with my guys Ross Peterson, Carson Kolb, and Drake football head coach Joe Woodley at the awesome Kelly's Little Nipper charity golf event, where all the donations, all the proceeds go to the Des Moines Boys and Girls Club. And it was a blast over at Grandview. We didn't play the best, but it was still a great time. And the after party over at Kelly's was a blast, and just can't wait to kind of dive into that. For those who haven't gotten to go and experience that tournament, you need to sign up fast, but that's what you need to do for next year. And we'll also, of course, get to the Caitlin Clark drama. Not a lot of WNBA talk on this show, as you know, but we're going to still bring it up when it's the first thing that pops up everywhere. It involves the face of the league from Iowa, of course, Caitlin Clark. Drama in the WNBA. We'll get to that as well. We'll talk a little NBA playoffs. We may not, do the box score stuff that we usually do, and it may just be one of these things I notice after a certain team lost over the weekend and what it really tells me about the NBA playoffs this season. We'll get to that, of course, and then finish up with some golf as Scottie Scheffler continues to just dominate this season, and going to be a great time. Thank you again so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate. All that stuff really helps out. One of my buddies from high school is starting up a podcast, so both of us are kind of figuring this thing out. And his isn't a sports one. His is, all about business and entrepreneurship, and it's really good. But we've talked about, just little things that go a long way that I didn't realize when I listened to podcasts, and he didn't as well. But just these little likes, comments, rates, they go a long way. So you guys have been kicking ass with it on my show, and I really appreciate that. Keep those likes and comments coming, and follow us on social media. Let's get into the Kelly's Little Nipper tournament, the golf tournament. It was a blast, charity golf tournament. There were so many people. There's 36 teams, 4 people on a team, and it's run to perfection. Jeff and his crew really make sure to get people out there, have a good time. A lot of fun, different games, too, that you can play on the greens that I didn't know about. And so, when you go over to Kelly's at 1701 East Grand Avenue in Des Moines, it is something that they take pride in. And if you haven't been involved in it, you have to sign up. And you got to do it quick. Like I said, it sells out so fast. I texted Jeff. I was in St. Louis, and he had just posted the social media or the lineup of, hey, guys, get out here, get signed up. It goes quick. I texted him like, hey, what's the possibility Media Row gets a team? And he's like, good thing you texted me because we were about to sell out here in the next 3 minutes. That's how fast it goes. So make sure when you get down to Kelly's Little Nipper at 1701 East Grand Avenue, you bring up the golf tournament and you have a great time over there. The 3 keys will still be there for the golf tournament or at the bar of great food, great drinks, and better community over at Kelly's Little Nipper. But to the action that happened on Saturday, we had an amazing team. Not in athletic ability outside of one player in Joe Woodley. That dude can crush the ball. And it's so funny. Ross and I talk about this all the time. You see a true athlete, and it doesn't matter what sport they play. If they were a legitimate athlete, the ball just sounds different. And that's how it was with Joe. So Joe was really our long driver. And then Ross, Carson, and I were just kind of the vibes guy. We were all there just to have a good time. But an absolute blast. It was so fun. It was great to get to know Joe Woodley on a more personal level, as I will be covering his football team in the fall. And, I'd met him prior. We've talked on the show. We've had interviews with him. And, at the radio station, of course, him and Ross being so close, got to know him on a professional level. But being out there cracking a few beers and swinging some golf clubs, of course, it brings up great conversations. And then it was really cool to, it was a perfect send-off for our guy Carson. Those Drake Bulldog fans who listen, how great Carson is and the effort he puts in and the passion he has for what he does and how he's going to kick ass over at UNI, despite that being our rivals. But I wish him all the best. So it was a great send-off for him. And then Ross, he's been my guy, since we got both let go the same week. And he's been helping me out for as long as I can remember. Even, he was one of the first guys to let me really open up the microphone at the radio station. And so really owe a lot to Ross, and he's going to be helping Megan and I find some houses here in the future as well. So it was a great way to just say thank you to all those guys, get to know Joe better. And I learned something about Joe Woodley. So it's funny, conversations. I was mentally trying to be like, I'm not just going to constantly ask him about Drake football and sports because we have plenty of time to do that. I'm sure he gets tired of always talking about the same thing. But we got on the subject of him playing at Iowa State, and Ross brings up how he had this interception against Texas. And it was the first time he ever saw someone get kicked out of the press box because I don't know if they were someone close to Joe or someone who had covered Joe since he was at high school or what, but went nuts. And Joe's like, yeah, it was a pretty cool moment, picking off Vince Young. And I'm like, hold on. You picked off Vince Young, one of the greatest college football quarterbacks of my lifetime. And he's like, yeah. And so right away, I'm like, do you have the football? And he's like, no, I didn't keep that. He's like, I think my mom has my jersey framed somewhere in the basement. But if I put that up anywhere, my brothers and friends would give me crap. And I respect the hell out of people like that. And Ross and I both were like, that is very cool. That is so cool that you can have moments like that and kick ass at a sport at a high level, and you still just sit there and you're like, yeah, it was a really cool moment. It was part of my life, but it wasn't everything. And so I was like, I respect that. I learned, though, I could not be that person whatsoever. Like, I'm keeping that football. Every time we have a Super Bowl party, I'm like, hey, before you grab the dip, you see that football up there? Yeah, so picked it off against the Vince Young. It was pretty much the greatest moment of Iowa State football history. Like, I'd be playing it up. I have no shame in admitting that. I don't have that backbone that Joe Woodley has to be able to be like, yeah, I picked off Vince Young. It is whatever. So it was just fun to get to have those conversations, and we will have a lot more fun conversations with Joe Woodley on the show as the year progresses. But let's get into why you're tuning in today. Let's get into the real sport headlines of the past weekend. And today, no interviews with mentors or people that inspire me. You're stuck with me, but we're gonna have a good time. So jumping off first with the thing that was talked about and flooded social media all weekend long. Caitlin Clark against the Chicago Sky, Angel Reese, all the drama, and it was a perfect setup by the WNBA. Like, that's how you kick off a season, is you put your two most biggest names in the league against each other and two that have history against each other. Indiana handles it, wins 93-58. Caitlin Clark puts up historic numbers. She scores 20 points, 10 assists, 10 rebounds, and in now 41 games in her career, she's become the second most WNBA player with 20 points and 10 assist games in WNBA history. And the person in first only has 10, as Clark has 9, and it took her 430 games. Clark, 41. And you also look at it, and in terms of 20-point triple-doubles, Caitlin Clark now has 20% of 20-point triple-doubles in WNBA history. And so are people talking about those stats? Are they talking about how Clark in her sophomore year isn't missing a beat, is just charging up the WNBA history stat lines? No. Are they talking about Angel Reese going up and putting up a double-double at 10, 12 points and 17 rebounds? No. What they're talking about and what the WNBA probably wanted to happen is Clark and Angel Reese. So if you missed it, which I'd be really shocked if you did, in the third quarter, kind of middle of the third quarter, Angel Reese drives baseline. Clark fouls her, like just reaching for the ball, fouls her. Reese kind of plays it up, falls on the ground, and then gets up to go after her. And it becomes a flagrant, which, let's start there. It's not a flagrant foul whatsoever. It wasn't towards the face. It wasn't shoving. It was legit just going for the ball, and she was trying to foul her. It's better to foul in that situation than give Angel Reese a free layup. But Reese falls down, plays it up, like we see players in the NBA do as well, and gets up right away and tries to charge at Clark. And Clark just puts her hands up and kind of walks away from the situation, which, again, kudos to Caitlin Clark for how she handles just all the criticism and praise that she gets at her age. But definitely not a flagrant foul. You have Reese F-bombing her, and apparently they're still investigating it, but it sounds like fans were pretty brutal against Angel Reese too. And so you have all this kind of covering up what should be an amazing moment for the sport. And I get it. Drama is drama. You know, any publicity is good publicity. And people, you know, credit this to like, yeah, man, WNBA, they're trying to make it like Magic and Bird. The thing about Magic and Bird were the games were competitive for one thing. In these games against the Sky, Clark has handled it. Like they're not, you know, down to the wire games. Clark is 5-1 against Angel Reese since she did the championship ring in her face. And so I think, honestly, I know the WNBA is like, this is what we wanted. You know, this is why we pinned up Angel Reese and Clark against each other. But I think it's bad. I think it's bad for the sport. It takes away from what should be a really cool game. And yes, you should have jawing. You should have drama. But it shouldn't be the thing that controls the game, the post-game talk. It shouldn't be the first thing every player has to talk about and every analyst has to talk about. But here we are. Here we are on a Drake podcast talking about Caitlin Clark and a flagrant foul that shouldn't have been a flagrant foul. And so it's working for the WNBA. I just think personally, as a basketball fan, it's not what I wanted to tune in for. Sure, did I want to tune in to see a little jawing back and forth? Yeah, but I don't want it to overshadow a great game that Clark had or anyone had. If Reese put up those numbers, it shouldn't overshadow what she did. So a little WNBA talk. Again, we may put out a poll and see what you guys think. Was it good for the WNBA or not with all this drama that's happening? Again, people are talking about it. I get it, but in my personal opinion, it's overshadowing what could be a really special event. So Fever start 1-0, and you know, talk about a hell of a way to kick off your sophomore year for Caitlin Clark. But we may try to get, because I saw a handful of people in the Iowa media make the trip to go cover that game, and so may try to get one of the reporters on the show to just kind of preview the season. Because again, I'm someone who I like Caitlin Clark. There's a handful of players in the WNBA I enjoy, but it's not something I was going out and looking for to watch. And it's also just the time of the year. Like, in the summer, I'm not in the basketball mindset. I'm in the golf and baseball mindset. So that plays a factor too. But we may try to get someone on later this week. So, keeping with the basketball talk, now moving to the men's side of things in the NBA playoffs. After the Thunder really kind of controlled and handled the Denver Nuggets in Game 7 on Sunday, the conference championships are set for 2025. The Timberwolves back in the conference championship second straight year. They'll take on the Thunder, which is an amazing story. The Thunder turnaround because, man, when they had all those first-round picks lined up, I remember going to a gym in high school, and the janitor was a huge Thunder fan, and we would talk basketball and sports all the time. And he would always say, man, in a few years, this Thunder team, if they draft correctly, they're going to be lethal. And here they are, number 1 seed in the conference championship going up against the Timberwolves. I still am pulling for the Timberwolves. I just think it'd be cool to see Anthony Edwards on the biggest stage. Plus, I still think they're the most fun team to watch in the NBA playoffs. And then moving to the Eastern Conference Championship, Pacers and Knicks. Again, just history with that one. That's one of the coolest playoff series we've seen, and it goes in generations. In the 90s, you had some really good matchups, of course, with the Reggie Miller, John Starks, headbutting Reggie Miller, the 8 points in 8 seconds, 9 points in 8 seconds. So you have that in the 90s. Early 2000s, the Pacers go and play in a finals and took down the Knicks on their way to that. The Knicks won played in an NBA finals as well. So you just had these two teams early or mid to late 90s going at it, early 2000s. And then in 2013, they played where you had Roy Hibbert stuffing Carmelo Anthony. That was like my first experience of watching this series because, of course, I was too young prior to that. So you just have so much history between these two teams. And so that one's going to be really fun to watch. I think the conference championships, both of them are really intriguing. Now, I'm not going to preview the conference championships today, but I do want to bring up a team that lost and I think is good for the NBA because, again, I like the NBA, but it's not, again, I don't watch it religiously. I was big into the Spurs with Duncan. Again, I keep track of the Spurs, but I'm not going to pay money to get the NBA League Pass to watch every one of their games. So it's more just what I see in headlines, what I hear from people too. I have some buddies who are diehard NBA fans, and Carson Culp being one of them. And in the golf charity tournament on Saturday, I asked him what his thoughts were on the Celtics being knocked out on Friday night. And he was like, love it. And I go, okay, this is how I feel too. And this is why I feel like no one's upset that the Celtics are knocked out of this playoffs. Number one, it's because they're not I don't think their style of basketball is fun to watch. They shot 97 of 277 from beyond the arc. And what's the biggest complaint from old heads and honestly guys like me watching the NBA? It's just too one-on-one jacking up threes. And that's how Boston plays. They were live by the three, die by the three. And they died by the three. Bad. Real bad. They shot 15 of 60 in game 1. They were 10 of 40 in game 2. 12 of 40 in game 6. And it's not fun. And there's players on the Celtics that I really enjoy. Al Horford, I know he's a veteran, but still can get the job done. Good rebounder, good defender. He's not a great offensive scorer now at his age, but he can still get the job done. Hey, guys, maybe try passing it down into the paint. And then I love Jaylen Brown. Think he's really fun to watch. Derek White is a great player. There's really good players on this team. And Tatum is a talented player. I do think he falls into this weird category of great player, but man, sometimes on camera behind a mic, just for lack of a better word, comes off very cringy. Like, we've all seen the videos of when they won the title last year of him, stealing Kevin Garnett's "We did it" chant, and it comes off so unnatural. It's like he was trying to get that social media moment. And, he steals Kobe's, was there to be happy about? Job's not finished. Like, verbatim steals it. And again, I know that's probably me being too analytical and whatever, but it comes off weird. It's like when LeBron, would talk about him reading the Malcolm X book, and when they ask him about it, it sounds like when an 8th grader didn't do the reading assignment and gets asked to go up to the front of the class. So the Celtics, there's players I like, but there's a lot that I don't like with them. And I'm starting to notice from people that follow this league closely, no one's really that upset. No one is that upset that the Celtics lost. And that's coming from people who don't like the Knicks too. Because the Knicks, he had Brunson flopping constantly, and that was a big thing on social media for a while. But I will take the Knicks style of play over the Celtics any day of the week. And watching that game on Friday night, I'm not a Knicks guy, but I was really happy with the outcome. And I think, again, the conference championships, this is kind of what I would want to see. I think the Pacers with Halliburton brings up a great story. Knicks, can they get to the NBA Finals? What can they do? And then Timberwolves, back-to-back conference championships. Can they win one, though? And then the Thunder just being a young team led by an MVP. It doesn't get better than that. So, to wrap up today's show, we're going to step away from the basketball topic and go over to the golf course. And, we shot 4 under, and we made it look real difficult because we sucked on Saturday. And then you watch Scottie Scheffler at arguably one of the hardest courses at the PGA level, with those roughs, those greens, people missing short putts that they usually make all throughout Thursday and Friday. And he just dominates, absolutely dominates. And it's a controlled dominance. And what I mean by that is, I think, in terms of just watching golfers in this day and age, he's my favorite to watch. It used to be Spieth, just because of the way he would talk to himself. But Spieth hasn't been playing to his capability in a long time. And Scheffler has just been the main guy, winning everything, it feels like. At least being competitive at everything. And what I love most about him, and the reason I was a big Tim Duncan fan, to bring NBA back into this, is the calm, cool, and collected. No matter what happens, you don't see that dude really get pissed. And I think people give Rory a bad rap. He's throwing clubs. He threw a club on like Thursday night in the first round. And people gave him a bad rap for sticking up for the PGA. And I get, for he was being a company man, trying to please the PGA, and I know he had issues with Liv on his own, but I think he was really used as the scapegoat, and he even used that term. So there's a lot with Rory that people are torn apart with. I don't think there's much that people are torn apart with Scottie Scheffler. And now he's won 2 of the 4 majors, has an opportunity to win the U.S. Open next, and then the Open coming up last in the season. And again, just controlled dominance. That's how I would explain Scottie Scheffler. And even in moments today, where Rahm was coming up close, DeChambeau was coming up close, like, you never saw him get nervous. He knew what he needed to do. And then he shows the emotion once he finishes that putt on 18. And the best thing, what could be the best thing to come from this weekend in all of sports, is the Nike ad that went out as soon as Scottie Scheffler won. And so Nike has been known to just really strike gold on their ads. I don't know many ads that aren't great out of Nike. And this one has a photo of Scheffler on a tee box hitting a drive, and it says best player in the world, guilty. And that is, of course, playing on the fact that a year ago in the PGA championship, that dude got arrested. And so he comes back, he wins it. He was wearing an orange polo to kind of mimic the orange jumpsuit in the practice round on Wednesday. And that's another thing, too, is like Scotty seems in interviews and, on the course, he seems like a cool dude. And so I think it's great for golf that Scotty continues to dominate. And then you have Rory playing some really good golf. DeChambeau, it seems like he is always right there. In the Masters, he was in, the final grouping and just couldn't get it done. Today, he was really trying to charge up that line, but Scheffler just outlasted him with that controlled dominance. So, next up in the golf world, of course, you have the U.S. Open that is on Father's Day weekend. So we will definitely cover that, as we have been, big golf guys. So I'm sorry if you don't like golf, but I think a lot of people were tuning in Sunday, especially when it started to get close there. And then he just exploded back into the leader. So that will do it for today's show. Before we wrap up, need to give a shout out to Stevens Automotive and Sales. Of course, we do this with Kelly's Little Nipper. Today was a little different because I wanted to give a shout out to how great Jeff ran the golf charity tournament. But we always usually do the 3 keys. And for Stevens Automotive, it's simple. Number 1, loyalty. They are very loyal. They've been here 35 years, family owned and operated in Johnston, Iowa at 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive in Johnston, Iowa. 2, they're going to make sure their communication is on point. Like, you're not going to get ghosted. I had a family friend that's dealing with car issues out of state and is talking about how tried to get in contact with people and just wouldn't answer. That doesn't happen at Stevens. They are always there at a drop of a hat for any customer, and it's the best, seriously, for someone like me who knows nothing about cars, and it's great for people that know everything about cars to still just have that communication, and they will explain everything and figure out what the issue is and make sure you're out on the road safely. Number 3, and I think this is the best one because my brother lives in Wisconsin, and I've said this 1,000 times, but our family has used Stevens for over 20 years. And my brother, when he moved to Wisconsin, he mentioned to me of like, yeah, it's difficult because you have people that try to scam you. You have people that try to BS you. That doesn't happen at Stevens either. I've never had a moment where I felt like they were taking advantage of me being young, never felt like they were taking advantage of anyone that I've sent there. They are just great people. 35 years of family owned and operated, 5320 Northwest Beaver Drive, Johnston, Iowa. And when you go to Stevens, make sure to let them know that Media Row sent you. So that will do it for today's show. We will get into Wednesday's show. Hopefully I got a few emails sent out to a few people I want to try interview for this week. Of course, it's always difficult at the start of the week to get everyone gathered up, but we will definitely talk some NBA playoffs and just keep it rolling with the sports headlines. And hopefully I will not be deathly sick. Now, deathly sick was an over exaggeration, but I feel like crap. So I'm going to go rest. You guys have a good one. We will see you Wednesday on the Media Row podcast.